This guy has always seemed like such a downer. He only has a high school graduation and didn't go to college because he was raised by a single parent since high school. That's kind of problematic, isn't it? He claims to work in the food industry these days, although it's only a ramen store. Who is he attempting to win over? I was invited to these mixers as a draw, and I had this classmate who always looks down on me. I sighed to myself, thinking, this is it once more. But the gorgeous models at the party came running to me when one of the staff members identified me and told them who I really was. My name is Adam. I began working in a neighboring retro ramen restaurant after I graduated from high school, and I've remained there ever since. My mother had been urging me to attend college at the time, but I dismissed her advice, telling her I had other plans. As a child of a single mom, I was aware that we lacked the funds for college. I happened to find a part-time job at the ramen store, but it was a fun place to work because of the great staff. Naturally, I took great pride in the ramen store, but when people inquired what I did for a living, I would just reply that I was in the food sector. It's simpler to put it that way because I've worked there for a long time and have held a variety of positions. That response suffices for the majority of folks, but one person would constantly make fun of me. James was that man. They were high school classmates. James and I didn't really get along. In fact, we didn't really talk much. James frequently received reprimands from teachers, colored his hair vivid colors, and wore his uniform carelessly. Although gregarious, he gave off the impression of being too familiar. He openly discussed hanging out with other girls and making out with other people's partners despite having a girlfriend. When we were in the same class, he would frequently make students from neighboring schools wait for him or go out on dates with different girls across town. He was also well known for his womanizing. I can count on one hand how many chats we had at one point. I didn't even have his email address. However, I met James at a hip bar one day. Hey, is that Adam? I was first taken aback by the stranger who started speaking to me out of the blue. The man who was speaking to me was well-groomed and dressed in high-end labels. I said, perplexed at first because I hadn't noticed him. What? You can't recall. James, it's me. He smiled at me. That's when I at last recalled this extremely familiar classmate. Are you Adam, correct? Whoa, you really haven't changed. Funny as hell. He continued to tap my shoulder as though he was amused by something. After high school, James attended a prestigious institution and is currently employed by a large advertising agency. He announced with pride that he was having a mixer with several gorgeous girls in the bar. It looks like he's still leading a lavish lifestyle. Adam, why are you in this place? This is where I work. Really? And now, what are you doing? I am employed in the food industry, was my standard response. James then erupted into laughter. You're still employed at that ramen restaurant. His abrupt chuckle upset me a little, but it didn't seem like a good idea to argue with him. James had constantly made fun of me. I answered, yes, that is correct. James then let out a louder chuckle and exclaimed, really? Did you not forego college? Are you still only employed at the ramen shop? Man, that's hilarious. An adult employed at a ramen restaurant? That is extremely humorous. No, it's not the ramen shop alone. His constant laughing was starting to irritate me, so I tried to reprimand him. But he interrupted me with, it's okay. It's okay. Man, don't bother bragging that you work in the food industry. This is the most I've laughed in a long time. I ran out of energy to correct James as he wiped tears from the corners of his eyes. James took his phone out of his pocket just as I was about to walk away. Send me your contact details. Now that I'm wealthy beyond belief, I'll treat you to some delicious food at some point. I became a little irritated by his mocking tone. Not really, though. I can also invite a ton of adorable gals. Come on, please. His phone screen displayed images of him eating at a restaurant and posing in front of appetizing-looking dishes with unidentified women. Like this one or this girl. Eating delicious cuisine with attractive girls, isn't it great? The food appeared appetizing in the pictures. To be honest, I had no interest in dating, but I had wanted to explore the popular restaurants he frequented. I was therefore tempted. James seemed to know a lot of great places, some that I had never heard of. It's instructive for someone in the food sector to visit a variety of eateries. Well, let's grab some food now. James obviously thought of me as his backup at these mixers. I may as well take advantage of him too, since that's how he wants to use me. If our schedules align, I answered, giving him my contact details. I kept getting invited to mixers after that. James appeared to be a social butterfly, throwing get-togethers nearly every week. The location was rarely the same, in addition to the girls changing every time. Despite the fact that his research was done just for mixers, his research skills amazed me. James was throwing another mixer tonight. Considering how often he'd stressed, I've gathered lovely models. He was obviously trying to get near to them when he said, "You have to come." James's regular technique was to make fun of me to emphasize how wealthy and successful he was. Of course it irritated me, but having a meaningful conversation with him wasn't worth it. Reluctantly, I agreed to go even though I had no interest in modeling, since I wanted to check out the venue tonight. The mixer this evening took place at a chic eatery that specializes in French fusion cuisine. Our meeting point was meant to be at the door. James declared right away that he was going after Mia tonight. I'm placing all of my money on tonight. Please don't get in my way. I'm genuinely going to win Mia over. He gave me a cold look, but I didn't know who Mia was. Adam, that's the reason I treated myself to this fancy restaurant. You are invited. Please read the room. He wouldn't believe me even if I told him it was just the restaurant and the food that captivated me. With a non-committal nod, I let James get all thrilled on his own. As an influencer, Mia has 1 million followers, and she's adorable. She also has a fantastic body. I have to go grab her. James was swooning over her, and I was too stunned to reply. I managed to end the chat as the start time drew near, and we went inside the restaurant. 3 women were waiting in the private room we were shown. They were all really gorgeous as models. James laughed. Sorry to keep you waiting. Nice to meet you. The most stunning woman grinned and waved to us. I learned that she went by Mia. It became evident throughout the introductions why James was so keen to win her over. We raised a glass and started the mixer with James's well-practiced lead. Following the introductions, James immediately started boasting. I noted the meal and took pictures of it as usual. This guy just keeps taking pictures of the food. He's such a nerd. Fighting the need to apologize, James said, "Sorry about that," and then he went on with his regular denigration of me. Disregarding him, I carried on sampling the food and recording my thoughts. I would respond when addressed, but James spent much of the time chatting with the women. So, this place is really well liked, right? How did you obtain a booking? James leaned forward eagerly at Mia's words. I actually know who owns this place. Maintains secrecy about it. James abruptly lowered his voice. With overly enthusiastic praise, the women said, "Wow, that's amazing." James, feeling good about himself, carried on talking about how he knew the owner. He was talking a lot for someone who claimed it was a secret. I was sighing to myself when I heard someone say, "Hey, Adam," and I looked up. Mia had shifted, somehow, and was seated directly in front of me. Have we met somewhere before? My heart skipped a beat, the way she said it feeling like a pickup line. It was nerve-wracking to hear from such a lovely woman, even though I knew it wasn't. You look familiar, Adam. Well, I don't believe so. I wouldn't have forgotten if I had met someone as lovely as her. I was going to respond, there must be a mistake, when James loudly interjected. Not at all. Since he lacks any uniqueness, you most likely simply see faces similar to his everywhere. James chuckled, saying that a plain guy like him would never meet someone like you, Mia. Even the women appeared surprised by his overtly condescending remarks, even though they were legally true. It was pitiful that he was decreasing his own position instead of raising it while remaining unaware of it. Then James launched into yet another tirade of dull boasting. James went on to brag, "Recently, I worked with a celebrity," bringing up celebrities and comedians that we frequently see on TV. "I'll introduce you to them sometime." I didn't care, so I concentrated on taking pictures of the new dishes and writing down my ideas. Then Mia talked to me once more. "Adam, are you on social media?" "No, not really." As I cocked my head, in response to what seemed like a pointless question, she said, "I noticed you were taking lots of pictures." Her question about whether I was planning to post them online finally made sense to me. "Oh no, I work in the food industry." I saw James smirk as soon as I said that. "Don't try to show off, it's just a ramen shop." The women, who had been having a good time, gave me a startled expression. They appeared to be saying, "It's unbelievable. This guy has always been so depressing, even in high school." Because he only has a high school graduation and comes from a single-parent household, he chose not to attend college. These days, isn't that problematic? And ever since he began as a part-time employee, he has been employed at a ramen store. He continues to work there even at the age of nearly 30. An adult working at a ramen store is so ridiculous. It makes sense why he tries to improve the sentence by adding food industry. James persisted, despite my want to clarify that it wasn't about bragging. "Normally, I only treat girls, but since Adam is struggling, I'll give him an exemption. I mean, I'm not exactly an affluent gal. To me, there's no use in treating someone like him. After all, I owe the underprivileged some charity as an elite. Isn't the way I treated him really kind?" The women gave faint smiles in return. It was obvious that they were delayed, but James, possibly due to inebriation, failed to observe. He was setting me down and drinking happily. He most likely believed he was enhancing his own reputation in his thoughts. I was going to sigh when Mia interrupted. She brightly replied, "Maybe I should upload this to social media too," attempting to lighten the tense situation. Taking out her phone, she took a picture of the dish that was still uneaten. The other women started snapping photos of their meals as well, as if they were supposed to. After taking a couple shots, Mia gracefully lifted a mouthful of food to her lips. After the first taste, she grinned and said, "Delicious. But it could be a bit more colorful." I had to respond to her teasing remark. "What do you mean?" I asked eagerly, but Mia smiled kindly at me. Dishes that appear excellent in pictures are more popular these days. Taste is vital, of course, but eye-catching colors definitely draw the attention. Thus, a little green here would be ideal, she said, indicating a section of the dish. I see. The appearance really does matter. Although I didn't think of it as photogenic, I believe I had been careful of that. A simple tweak, like switching up the sauce or garnish, can have a big impact. The garnish is visible. In addition, you might want to consider the plates you use, Mia said, providing me with specific guidance that I never would have considered on my own. James, obviously annoyed that I was chatting to Mia, smashed his glass on the table as I was taking notes. "Read the room, Adam. You are a mere employee of a ramen shop pretending to be knowledgeable about food. For ramen, color is irrelevant." James's agitated tone caused the tension in the room to rise. "Adam, you're destroying the dinner. Please go now." I had never before received such open criticism for taking notes and pictures. James clicked his tongue angrily and gave me a scowl. "Just leave. Are you not aware that you are ruining the atmosphere?" I forced myself not to retort that James was the one depressing everyone. But we're still in the middle of the course. I shot back. I would have liked more of Mia's guidance. James looked intent on getting rid of me. "You pitiful loser, shut up. People like you are not designed for this environment. Simply leave. You're destroying the cuisine." The mood grew chilly as he dismissively waved his hand. Things would only get worse if we stayed any longer. I was receiving helpful advice, but I was forced to go. I made the decision to return later by myself. I got up and started gathering my things. "Aha! You miserable loser, go home and cook some ramen." James chuckled while I made my way to the exit. The waiter with the tray stared at me as the next dish was being presented. "Mr. Thompson, are you leaving?" He spoke to me. James's stupid voice reverberated through the silent room before I could respond. "Mr. Thompson, how come? Was that what I heard? Am I intoxicated?" James chuckled. "You have to be mistaken, friend. This guy works at a ramen shop." The server seems perplexed. "Excuse me, but aren't you Mr. Thompson of Thompson International?" "That's correct." I nodded. "What?" James bellowed. "Before you depart, the owner would like to say hello. Please give me a moment to wait." I nodded again as the waiter asked in a courteous manner. I had an incident that led to me being referred to as Mr. Thompson. One day, after a few years of employment at the ramen store, a foreigner entered. William was our server, and he was raving about our ramen to everyone he spoke to. Then he asked if we would join him, saying that this flavor would be a hit if we brought it to the States. The 60-plus owner declined, stating that it was not practicable. William, however, was adamant and began visiting our store every day. William was always enthusiastic, even in the face of their continuing impasse. I eventually began speaking to him in straightforward English. My English was shamefully bad when I looked back. William never made fun of me, though. He would have serious chats with me, using gestures and bad Japanese. I had bigger dreams after speaking with William, and I had finally discovered what I really wanted to achieve. Up until that point, I had given up on dreams and accepted a life of monotony. I asked the proprietor if I could bring the ramen back to America because I wanted to change that. He advised me not to at first, but eventually gave in after I persisted. That was the start of my hectic days. I studied English in my free time and trained to replicate the flavor of ramen to perfection. I made multiple study visits to America and lived a frugal lifestyle to save money for the business. After making the decision to do so, it took me a few years to open our first store in the United States. We gradually increased our sales and became a well-liked location that was consistently full despite a variety of problems and trial and error. As a result, we were highlighted in renowned publications, on the internet, and even in Japanese media. Isn't Thompson International the company that runs that hugely popular ramen shop in America? Mia inquired, seemingly having suddenly recalled. That's correct, of course. You know a lot of things. I visited the place in Hawaii. I recall being shocked to see that the owner was Japanese after seeing a picture there. That's why you appeared familiar, Mia said with a kind grin. That had to be from a visit-related forced photo shoot. Even though I don't like photos, I had to give in to their pressure. The idea of it being on display at the store surprised me and made me blush. So is this restaurant today also yours? Yes, in a way. I went back to Japan after being successful with the ramen shops in America. I then started opening restaurants and bars. We are currently in a unique restaurant that caters to affluent customers. I arrived to assess the quality of the cuisine, atmosphere, and service. However, James's tantrum interrupted my review. As I was thinking about this, Kane, the owner, who is a tall, attractive man with platinum blonde hair, came over to talk to us. William, who worked in the ramen store, introduced me to this wonderful man. The majority of the upscale eateries I planned are run by him. He doesn't speak flawless Japanese, therefore we constantly communicate in English. I could hear women saying, "Wow," from behind. They're conversing in English. Incredible. Following a quick update and friendly hello, Kane inquired, "Are you leaving already?" I decided it would be better to leave after James kicked me out and Kane had a lot on his plate. As I announced that I was going to be leaving, surprised voices could be heard behind me. What? Let's discuss more, Adam. Yes, I hardly had time to speak with you. I was abruptly pushed back to my seat by two women who grabbed my arms. Before they understood I knew Kane, they had seemed uninterested in me. I was amused by their abrupt attitude shift and made the decision to be honest with them, so as not to give them false hope. I'm sorry, but Kane is already married, so I can't introduce you to him, I had planned on saying. The two women, however, retorted with a smile that they already knew that. It seems that they had noticed the ring gleaming on Kane's finger quite fast. We want to talk to you. Adam. What? Me? The two women started asking me questions all of a sudden. I was taken aback by their enthusiasm, especially because I wasn't there to find a girlfriend. James attempted to speak with the women throughout their interrogation, but they ignored him. Oh, really? Interesting. James eventually gave up trying to respond to their flurry of inquiries. I kept making notes about the food that was being served. Mia, who had primarily been watching, piped out when the main course was served. Can I take a picture? I wasn't used to receiving such attention from a gorgeous woman, so her radiant grin made my heart skip a beat. Since Mia had stated that she was an influencer, it is likely that she shared photos of food online. It might help if Mia promotes our eatery. Yes, of course. However, I'm not particularly good at it. Give your phone to me, please. When I extended my hand, Mia gave me a start, but then she laughed a little. More than just the food, I meant a photo with you. Ha. I felt awkward at the sudden request for a selfie after realizing my error. But is that all right? I didn't like having my picture taken. I had to grant Mia her request. Mia moved to sit next to me when I agreed. Instead of asking someone else to take the photo, as I had expected, she set up her phone's front camera to get a photograph of us with the food. She was compelled to sit near. When she clicked the shutter, her lovely smile and my clumsy smile appeared on the tiny screen. I'm not comfortable taking pictures, but when Mia asked if I could publish this on social media, I couldn't say no. Hi, Mia. Come along for the photo too. In an attempt to get the picture, James pushed in from the side. I recalled that at first he had shown interest in Mia. I started to back away, but Mia called out to James. I apologize, but I'll pass on taking a picture with you because I don't like people who constantly boast and denigrate others. How come? Even so, even with his typical bravado, James was flatly rejected and was unable to move on. He slouched his shoulders and gave me a spiteful yet irritated stare. Adam, how did you get to be president? James didn't seem so much upset at me as sulky. His failure was his own fault, yet both of us had exploited others for our own gain. Thanks to you, James, I said. His brow wrinkled in perplexity. His mockery of me forced me to prove myself, even though I had always accepted a routine life. I put a lot of effort into showing everyone what I was capable of, even in the terrible times in America. I am somewhat indebted to you. James growled sulkily. Shut up. You've always had aptitude and intelligence. You can aspire higher on your own and don't need to put other people down. That seems like ridicule coming from a winner like you. Oh no. Watch out. I'll also go big. Frustrated, James took a swig from his drink. For the first time, the unpleasant atmosphere from earlier had lifted and the supper felt good. Since then, Mia and I have maintained regular contact. Her guidance was really accurate and beneficial. Soon, Mia and I were not only messaging each other more often, but we were also having dinner together more often. Unable to give up on Mia, James would periodically contact her, but frequently lamented not hearing back. Maya responded to my innocuous question about it with a brilliant smile. I blocked him because I was scared of his overt intentions. Her gorgeous smile was so frightening that all I could do was chuckle a little. Mia has great taste and was naturally responsive to trends as a model. I made improvements to my restaurant's menu based on her advice, and young people soon began to enjoy it. As an influencer, Mia would publish pictures of the restaurants she enjoyed on social media. Whenever she talked about my restaurants, they would become so well known that it was difficult to acquire reservations. Mia and I had gotten together professionally, but we had also become partners in our personal lives. We developed a close bond by encouraging and occasionally reprimanding one another. I used to believe that I couldn't accomplish much, although it stung to be made fun of. I could have secretly thought that I deserved to be despised, but the need to disprove those who disparaged me is what has allowed me to get to this point. I discovered that it's critical to see every circumstance as an opportunity rather than wallowing in my emotions. I will never be able to thank you enough for introducing me to such amazing people. I want to carry on having an optimistic outlook and live a life of thankfulness.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" "Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike! What have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that?" "Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.